man in the village drops dead before he even hits the ground. No scream, just a collapse in the dust, as if something invisible had cut the strings that held him upright. 10 steps away, another man stops walking. The air turns heavy, colder, and a shadow stretches behind him, long-limbed and slow-moving. Its face is pale and unreadable, its robe dragging across the ground without touching it. This is a Shinigami, a god of death in Japanese belief, the one who comes not to kill but to collect. The man tries to turn, but his feet refuse him. The street ahead seems to pull away, as if the houses are sliding back into the dark. Somewhere to his left, a door slams shut, followed by hurried footsteps retreating deeper inside. A dog starts barking, but cuts off mid-howl, the silence that follows so deep it presses against the eardrums. The Shinigami keeps moving, slow but inevitable, each step eating away the space between them. The man's breath quickens, clouding in the cold, and the shadow ahead of him bends unnaturally, as if bowing toward the figure. His mind claws for any prayer or word of power, but nothing comes. Then the Shinigami raises one long hand toward his shoulder, and the light from every lantern flickers low. When its fingers touch the fabric of his robe, the ground falls away. He is no longer on the street, but standing ankle-deep in black water under a sky with no stars. Shapes are scattered across the horizon, human at first glance, until they turn their heads in perfect unison, their eyes glinting like wet stone. None of them speak. None of them move. They only watch, and he feels the truth sink in. Every one of them is waiting for him to join their number. The Shinigami stands at his side, silent, and in that moment, he knows there will be no bargaining. In Japanese mythology, the Shinigami is a god of death, but its role is far more complex than simply ending lives. It does not rampage through battlefields or strike like a predator. Instead, it moves quietly between the worlds of the living and the dead, a figure that appears when the last thread of life begins to fray. In some stories, the Shinigami is a silent guide, kneeling at the side of the dying and waiting without a word until the soul is ready to follow. It does not drag or force, but its presence makes resistance impossible, a weight in the air that convinces even the strongest heart to let go. In other tales, the Shinigami is more cunning, finding those whose will is already cracked and pushing them gently toward the edge. There are accounts of men walking home at night and meeting a friendly traveler who speaks of warm fires, absent loved ones, or the relief of sleep. They walk together for what feels like moments, only to realize the road has grown strange, lined with withered trees, the horizon fading into black. The traveler smiles, and the truth becomes clear: they have not been walking home at all. Unlike demons, the Shinigami does not need to kill. It does not spill blood or break bone. It calls. It invites. It waits at the place where the road ends, holding open a gate that no living soul can close. Some describe seeing 2 Shinigami arrive at once, speaking to each other over the body of the one they have come to collect, deciding who will take the soul. Others speak of seeing them before their appointed time, a warning that lingers in the mind for years, until the day they return and the invitation can no longer be refused. Every version agrees on one thing: once the Shinigami has fixed its gaze on you, the path you walk will end at its side. Compared to other ancient beings in Japanese mythology, the Shinigami is a relatively recent arrival, shaped from a mix of traditions rather than born from a single ancient source. Elements of Buddhist beliefs about death and the journey of the soul merged with older Japanese folklore. And during the Edo period, contact with Western ideas about the personification of death added new layers to its image. Before this time, Japan had many spirits and deities tied to dying or the underworld, but none quite like the Shinigami as it is known today. Its rise in the public imagination came not only from whispered stories, but from the stage. Kabuki theater, with its elaborate costumes and exaggerated movements, brought the Shinigami to life in front of audiences who might never have heard the name before. One popular play told the story of a man tormented by poverty who returns home late at night to find a stranger sitting in the shadows by his door. The stranger speaks softly, offering a way to end all suffering without pain, promising that beyond the threshold lies peace and reunion with those long gone. The man hesitates, sensing something unnatural, but each word seeps into him like a slow poison, dulling his fear. Finally, when the stranger says his name with unnatural precision, the man's hand reaches for the door. In the moment the wood slides open, the stage goes black, the audience left with the sound of a gust of wind and the slam of the door from inside. Such performances etched the Shinigami into popular imagination as more than a figure from distant belief. It became a presence that could be acted. Seen and feared, a god of death not bound to temples or shrines, but capable of stepping into any home uninvited. The Shinigami's form changes from story to story, but most descriptions agree on its unsettling. Frame a tall, almost skeletal figure whose height seems to bend with the ceiling, as though it could grow taller if the space allowed. Some say it moves as if underwater, its robes dragging across the floor without sound. Black as soot in one telling, and in others, pale as unbleached funeral cloth. Its face is concealed, either by a deep hood or a mask, so thin it looks like it could crack under a touch. The surface the color of sunless bone. The eyes are hollow, catching no light, and those who claim to have seen them say they felt their own heartbeats slow under that empty gaze. Its hands are long and cold, the kind of cold that seeps past skin and into the chest, with fingers that never fully straighten, always curved as though ready to grasp something just out of reach. In certain regions, the Shinigami is said to carry a lantern whose glow does not waver in wind, lighting roads no living person can follow. In other accounts, it holds a torch that burns with a pale blue flame, casting no heat but illuminating faces in a way that makes every flaw, scar, and wrinkle seem freshly cut. Families once believed that if a torch or lantern passed outside their window late at night, unseen footsteps pacing in the street, someone inside would not live to see morning. There are stories of farmers waking in the small hours to find the Shinigami sitting cross-legged at the foot of their bed, its stillness so complete that they believed at first it was a trick of the dark. It would stay there, silent, watching until the first light of dawn, and sometimes it would leave without a word. In one tale, an elderly woman saw it in her doorway 3 nights in a row, each time a little closer, until on the 4th night, she found it seated beside her, its mask lowered to reveal nothing but a hollow void. She died before sunrise. And yet, not all who see the Shinigami die. Some live for years afterward, carrying the weight of knowing it had once been close enough to touch them. These are the ones who keep their lamps burning through the night, never walking alone after sunset, and never sleeping with the door unlatched, because the Shinigami has already found their path, and return is only a matter of time. Many people think the Shinigami hunts its victims at random, grifting through villages like a predator, searching for weakness. But in the old stories, it is rarely so chaotic. The truth is that the Shinigami does not need to seek you out without cause. It comes for those whose names are already tied to the end, though what binds that name is not always fate alone. In some accounts, the Shinigami marks its chosen through a look so deep it feels like a weight pressing against the chest. Once that gaze has fallen on you, it is said you will see it again and again, always closer, until the day it finally stands at your side. One story tells of a fisherman who glimpsed a tall figure on the shore while hauling in his nets. It stood so still, he thought it a piece of driftwood, until its head turned to watch him. Over the next month, he saw it on the water's edge whenever he left to fish, each time a few steps nearer. On the morning it finally vanished, his boat was found adrift with no one aboard. In another tale, a merchant on a long journey stopped at an inn and felt a cold hand brush his shoulder as he stepped inside. He spun around to see nothing but shadow, Yet that night, he dreamed of the same hand reaching for him. For weeks, the dream returned, the fingers brushing closer to his skin each time, until he collapsed at the market and was gone before anyone could call for help. Some say the Shinigami can be delayed by placing salt at the threshold of your home, by tying sacred ropes above the door, or by keeping a small mirror near the bed to confuse it with its own reflection. Others believe the only true defense is to never speak to it at all, for it cannot take you without your acknowledgement. But these protections are only as strong as the will of the living, and the stories are full of those who thought they had more time, only to find the Shinigami waiting in the place they felt safest. One of the oldest and most repeated tales is that of a lone traveler walking a country road at dusk when he noticed another man ahead of him. The stranger moved slowly, his steps deliberate, and though the traveler called out, the man never turned his head. Curious and unwilling to pass up the company on such a lonely stretch, the traveler quickened his pace to catch up. For hours the two walked together, one always a short distance ahead, until the scenery grew strange, and the familiar road gave way to a path lined with blackened trees. The air thickened, the light drained from the horizon, and the figure ahead finally stopped. When the traveler stepped closer, the man turned, revealing the pale, mask-like face of the Shinigami. No one ever saw the traveler again. Another story tells of a woman who awoke one night to find a Shinigami standing in the corner of her room. It did not move or speak, and when she screamed, it simply turned and walked away. She took the encounter as a warning and spent the next 10 years in constant fear, never traveling alone, keeping charms and salt at her doors, and sleeping with every light lit. On the 10th anniversary of that night, she awoke to the same figure in the same corner. This time, it stepped forward and touched her hand. By morning, she was gone. The third tale is of a samurai mortally wounded on the battlefield. As he lay in the dirt, a Shinigami appeared beside him and told him his time had come. The samurai refused, offering instead his sword, his armor, and his service in exchange for a few more years. The Shinigami agreed, but when the appointed day returned, it came not alone, but with the faces of every man the samurai had killed in that borrowed time, each one following silently as he was led away. These stories are still told in Japan today, and while few will openly claim to have seen a Shinigami, the weight of its presence lingers in the culture. Even now, speaking its name in the wrong place or at the wrong time is enough to make some glance over their shoulder, half expecting to see a pale figure waiting there. A fisherman rows back to shore under a moonless sky, the water black and heavy beneath him. His nets are empty, but the calm sea and the cool night air make him linger, gliding slowly toward the dim outline of the harbor. Then a faint light appears far ahead, hovering low above the water. At first, he thinks it must be another fisherman returning late, but the glow is wrong. Pale blue, steady, and swaying gently as though it hangs from a hand that is not there. The fisherman slows his strokes, watching the light drift closer. As it nears, the shape behind it takes form. Tall, thin, robed, the fabric stirring without wind. A mask pale as bleached shell hiding its face. It steps across the water as if the sea were solid ground, and the sound of the oarlocks, the creak of the boat, even the lap of the waves fades into silence. The fisherman's hands loosen. The oar slips from his grasp and vanishes into the dark, but he does not move to retrieve it. The figure's lantern glows brighter as it reaches the hull, spilling light over the wood, and the cold begins at his feet, creeping up his legs and settling in his chest. His breath catches, his vision narrows, and he feels himself leaning toward the figure as if drawn forward. The next morning, his boat is found tied neatly to the dock, nets coiled in their place, but the fisherman is gone. Old men in the village recall another time when a sailor vanished in the same way, leaving behind a ship moored as if waiting for its owner to return. In both cases, the nights had been moonless, the water still, and a faint lantern had been seen moving without a boat. In every telling, the Shinigami moves like this, patient, deliberate, never rushing its work. It does not need to storm through villages or tear through crowds. It steps quietly into the lives of those it has marked, whether on a road, in a bed, or alone at sea, choosing its moment with the certainty of a hunter who has already set the snare. No wall can keep it out, no charm can hold it back, no distance can make it lose the path to its chosen. It walks between the living and the dead as easily as crossing a threshold, and sooner or later it will cross yours. And no one can ever be certain whether the next sound behind them is the wind, or the soft approach of the god of death who has come to take what is his. In the old tales, the Shinigami does not kill out of cruelty or hunger. It has no need for revenge, no thirst for blood. Its role is closer to that of a keeper of balance, ensuring that the living and the dead remain in their rightful places. Some say every soul has a fixed span, measured from the first breath, and when that time ends, the Shinigami is sent to collect what was never yours to keep. Others believe the Shinigami follows an unseen order, working under greater gods who decide when and how a life must end, moving across the land like a silent servant carrying out their will. In darker versions of the story, they are debt collectors in the truest sense, if a soul lingers too long in the world. The Shinigami must take another in its place to keep the count balanced, even if that means claiming someone before their time. Modern stories have changed this role, especially in popular culture. In series like Death Note, Shinigami are imagined as taking the remaining lifespan of a human they kill and adding it to their own, giving them a reason to hunt for survival. While this idea makes for compelling fiction, it does not appear in traditional Japanese mythology, where the Shinigami's purpose is not to extend their own life, but to fulfill the inevitable. Still, the contrast between these portrayals keeps the figure alive in the public mind, blending old fears with new inventions. There is an account from the mountains of a man who survived a near-fatal accident by sheer luck, or so he believed. That night he dreamed of a Shinigami kneeling beside him, whispering that the debt would be paid later. For years he lived untouched, until his brother died suddenly in his sleep. The villagers said the Shinigami had come for the man, but finding him under divine protection, took the life closest to him instead. Such stories are why the Shinigami is both feared and respected. It is not a wild beast to be fought, nor a curse to be broken. It is the hand that closes the door between worlds, and when it reaches for you, there is no plea, no bargain, no promise strong enough to make it let go. The sea, the road, the home you think is safe, all are paths it can walk. And when it does, the last thing you will know is that it has come not out of malice, but because your place among the living has ended.